Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Premier Ford and our government, it was my honor to introduce Ontario's 2023 Fall Economic Statement, Building a Strong Ontario Together. Ontario is growing rapidly. Last year, 500,000 people came to our province, and more than half of the new businesses that opened in Canada were opened right here in Ontario. But we cannot take this growth for granted during a time of heightened economic and geopolitical uncertainty. Our 2023 Fall Economic Statement provides our government with the flexibility needed to address the impacts of a slowing global economy while laying a strong fiscal foundation for future generations. L'exposé économique de l'automne 2023 donne au gouvernement la flexibilité nécessaire pour faire face aux conséquences d'un ralentissement de l'économie mondiale, tout en mettant en place de solides assises financières au profit des générations futures. This is our responsible, targeted approach to get Ontario through these uncertain times and build Ontario. We continue to be open and transparent with the people in Ontario about the province's fiscal situation. Due to a slowing economy impacting revenues and increasing our flexibility to respond to risks, our government is now projecting a $5.6 billion deficit in 23-24. We will continue to be responsible and prudent, which is why we are forecasting a balanced budget by 25-26. Our government is delivering on our plan to build Ontario. But despite our historic $185 billion capital plan, we must build more. That is why we are launching the Ontario Infrastructure Bank. Notre gouvernement lance la Banque de l'Infrastructure de l'Ontario. This is a new tool to attract trusted institutional investors to help finance essential infrastructure that would otherwise not get built. This new arm's-length agency will focus on long-term care homes, energy infrastructure, affordable housing, municipal and community infrastructure, and transportation, and is based on a model that is used around the world. As well, the new $200 million Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund will help get the water infrastructure necessary for new housing developments getting built. As well, proposed enhancements to the Ontario Focused Flow Through Tax Credit will be initiated to help unlock critical minerals in the north and get up to $100 million of investment top-up for Invest Ontario to help us grow our economy. Building a strong Ontario together means that the government is working for you. Bâtir un Ontario fort ensemble signifie que le gouvernement œuvre pour vous. We can continue to support workers, and we are helping them save for retirement. And earlier this week, we announced the expansion of breast cancer screening for those 40 to 49 years old, the extension of the gas tax cut, which will put more money back into people's wallets, and the removal of the provincial sales tax in qualifying purpose-built rental housing. Now, the road ahead will not be easy. As I've said before, we're not immune to any further potential economic slowdowns. But we have seen what the people of Ontario can do when we work together. And I'm fully confident that when we continue building a strong Ontario, everyone in Ontario will succeed. And with that, I'll be happy to take some questions.
Minister, Ontarians are struggling to pay the bills. Usage of food banks has never been higher. But beyond the gas tax extension, there's not a single new measure to help Ontarians with affordability. Why?
Well, we have done a lot of measures already to help Ontarians. And if you think back, we've moved very early on reducing the gas tax, which was 5.3 cents, and along with other measures, 10 cents a liter. Every time you go to the pump, you're saving 10 cents a liter than you otherwise would have. That's continuing on. As you know, we put in measures such as the increasing the minimum wage, indexing it to inflation. That just went up less than 30 days ago to $16.55. That was over 6.5% increase. And we took action earlier to double the low individual and family tax credit. So when you're making more income from 1.1 million low-income workers, you get to put more money in your pocket. So we've taken measures in the past that are helping people cope with the costs right now.
Can you explain the investment bank to me like I'm a 10-year-old? Can you dumb it down and explain how it benefits me as an Ontarian?
Richard, you want me to talk to you like you're a 10-year-old? Okay.
Yes, please. Which is not a stretch.
Which is it's a fair question, and it's a good question. You know, the way I think about it is that you look around the world, and there's many infrastructure banks in many parts of the world which helps get things built that perhaps otherwise wouldn't get built. And if you look at some of the best pension funds in the world, they're right here in Ontario. They call them the Maple 8, and they're investing in infrastructure around the world. Well, I'd like to see them invest in more infrastructure right here in Ontario. And you think about some of those world-class pension funds, Ontario Teachers, Ontario Municipal Employee Retirement System, OMERS, HOOP, the healthcare pension fund. If they're investing their members' money right in other parts of the world, why not invest in infrastructure while we're growing with the population growing right here in Ontario? So it'll give them more opportunities to invest in more infrastructure that will stay right here in Ontario. And it's another vehicle to be able to fund more and faster.
Was that where the idea came from? Are these pension funds were they asking the government, we want to invest in something, can you create it? Or
you know, the pension funds are always asking for, they're looking for opportunities to invest. And you know, every time they invest outside of Canada, they take currency risk and they take political risk. Well, guess what? They know the environment here in Ontario. They don't take currency risk when they invest here. So we're hopeful that working with the bank and through structuring deals, we'll be able to invest more in Ontario.
Continuing with the infrastructure bank, it says that in your paper, it says that it's going to be used to try and build affordable housing. Who is going to build that housing? Is the government going to get into the business of building housing, or is that money just going to be, made available to developers?
No, I don't think government is going to take over building housing. We're going to set the conditions to help getting houses built. And if we think about the announcement that I made yesterday with Paul Callander on the HST removal for purpose-built rentals, I've heard from a lot of builders that that's game-changing. You know, that's a mechanism to help get more built on housing. What the bank will be able to help is another tool on top of the $185 billion that we've committed for a 10-year capital plan for building hospitals and roads and transportation. This is another tool which is successful around the world to get more things built faster.
Minister, you said that it's a way of getting things built that wouldn't get built otherwise. So is Ontario actually having trouble attracting financing for things like building long-term homes? Okay, then explain to me, what's the benefit for taxpayers out of this? Because I think if I'm an investor and I want to invest in this building a long-term care home, I want a return. And so are taxpayers going to be now funding the profit for these investors off of our public infrastructure?
So the way the banks, I like to think about it is that, governments have tools to be able to provide maybe concessionary financing, which means better terms. You can be different places in the capital structure, and you look at some like the Canadian infrastructure banks, which took a while to stand up, and we hope we'll be able to stand up this agency very quickly. They've been able to put $10 billion to work and attract another $18 billion, $28 billion of investment that would otherwise not get built. I think about the small modular reactor that we're investing in, the Canadian in Darlington. That's another example where they're putting in a transaction that the Canadian Infrastructure Bank is operating. So this will be an opportunity for now an Ontario Infrastructure Bank to participate in transactions right here in Ontario.
The profit question, though. I mean, does this open the door for these mega pension funds to be profiting off of public infrastructure investments?
No, I don't think profiting is the right way to think about it. Think about it in terms of there's revenue streams. So the idea here is that they're not doing grants to build things, which is what our capital plan is. We're providing taxpayer money to build things. This is investors providing that money. Now they do want a return, so there has to be a revenue stream. And structures that meet taxpayer requirements and meet pension fund requirements allows around the globe, you see it, that stuff gets built, that using those revenue streams. So I think that's really an opportunity. So if you think about energy, for example, ratepayers, there is a revenue stream. Student housing, if you build student housing, there would be a revenue stream. So it's another tool that we can look at that might help, instead of the taxpayer taking all the risk and burden, that the bank and its institutional investors will take.
One of the examples for like long-term, you mentioned long-term care specifically, so these pension funds are going to get a revenue stream out of long-term care funds?
Long-term care already has revenue streams funding long-term care. And I think that's a couple core principles. One, there has to be some mechanism to be paid back, because our Ontario Infrastructure Bank, the principle is you get your money back. Number two, there has to be a level of being able to get a return, often when in a political jurisdiction like Ontario, where you understand the risks better. So some of these principles are really important when to have a successful infrastructure bank. Now, I will say this, it'll be an arm's length agency, and we have to recruit and seed the inaugural board and put the governance into terms of reference. And of course, we'll do the initial through regulation, and there'll be lots of opportunity to look at more questions and the consultation process involved.
How worried are you about how worried are you about the revenue situation? It's pretty bad. I can't remember the last time I saw the deficit go up so much in a 7-month period between the budget and the other than maybe the pandemic. I mean, this seems like the economy is slowing much more quickly than we thought. How worried are you about that?
Well, I get up every morning, and I worry, as I like to see. I sleep like a baby. I wake up every 2 hours and I cry. But I do that because we're in this together, and I want to make sure that we have the fiscal balance sheet to be able to take in whatever's around the corner. Now, that's why it's important to get to balanced budget. There's shocks to the system. I was in New York for 9/11. There was a financial crisis. We've just gone through a pandemic. And so we haven't wavered from our target to balance the budget, but we also have to recognize the environment we're in. And private sector economists they've lowered their forecasts. And so we have to take that into account. That has an impact on revenues. So that's what we're dealing with in reality. I don't know what's around the corner. What I do know, Rob, is that we're prepared for whatever comes around the corner.
So, Minister, just to ask a question that critics are going to ask, which is, this is a government under investigation by the RCMP. We've got the Greenbelt fiasco, where a small group of developers almost got a big windfall. Didn't happen. We also have a history of criticism of patronage appointments, unqualified people being put into positions. So what assurance can you give us that this board and the people running this bank, who now have $3 billion to play with, aren't going to all be, critics would say, guests at the Premier's wedding and things like that, the Premier's daughter's wedding?
I've always been very transparent, and I'm up in front of you guys at least every 90 days to talk about the fiscal and economic health of the province. And, I have a bunch of boards that report to me right now. I happen to be, apart from finance and economics, I'm also the minister in charge of alcohol and cannabis and gambling. So add that. Yeah, really fun stuff. Thanks. And they're all governed by arm's length agencies, and ably governed by a board of directors and a management team. And I meet with them frequently. And look, with regard to the RCMP, there's a process going through. We'll go through the process. But I can tell you, when I wake up, what I think about, and I think, for example, in Pickering, our schools, there's the growth, the population growth, the number of kids that go to school, and we need more schools built, getting those schools built. I think about the parents who have to get their kids to school or have to drive to work. I think about, okay, how do we build the infrastructure to make sure they can? And of course, if God forbid something happens, what's our healthcare system like and our long-term care? So that's what I think about.
The revenue streams being part of this model of investment. That rules out then roads, highways. This bank won't be financing those, I presume, because roads and highways need a revenue stream. That's tolls, and you guys are not into tolls.
I think that's fair. I mean, given that we removed the tolls from 412 and 418, that's not the environment we're in here right today. But there are many things that we could take a look at with regard to the infrastructure bank that could be institutional investor type transactions. And of course, when you look around the world, and then close, you just have to look here in Canada. It's working.
So on housing starts, your housing minister sent a letter to municipalities saying that over the next 3 years, they're expecting to build some 450,000 homes, or at least see 450,000 housing starts. Your document today said that over that same period of time, it's only supposed to be about 285,000, which obviously doesn't even cover the 100,000 that you need to build. This is a growing gap here. Or how concerned are you?
Well, we're going to keep running hard because we have to get the job done. So I'm encouraged that the housing starts, which you're referencing, come from the private sector forecast. So, and they have gone up since the budget, so directionally positive. But it also underscores how much more we have to do. Things like the strong mayor powers help with getting things built faster. The announcement that I made yesterday with Paul Calandra rebating the HST. I mean, that's 13%, 8% provincially, 5% federally. That some builders have already talked to me and said, this is really going to be the difference between not building and building. That a place up at Yonge and Eglinton, 550 units getting built, rental, right at Yonge and Eglinton, geothermal as well, energy efficient. So we're going to continue to put in place policies and measures. I've announced the water system fund as part of this fall economic statement. That's going to help with water infrastructure, which will help get more houses built. So I think we're going to be laser focused on getting those starts and more houses built.
But it seems like from where we're sitting right now, you're not going to make that 1.5 million target. Even if you try, I mean, you might try, but you may not make it. Could the infrastructure bank could that money be used in any way to help facilitate the building? Because it seems like a lot of builders are looking for capital and they're not necessarily getting it.
Absolutely. That's a really good point because there's many parts of the world where housing is through infrastructure type development banks where you have a revenue stream and you're able to build more house, like student housing, for example.
Okay, but you're not going to build the housing. So who's going to build the housing? So wouldn't that mean that the public infrastructure bank could be used for private developers? Are you putting in any condition to make sure that none of that money goes to private developers to build any kind of housing in Ontario?
There will be inaugural board and chair. It'll be an arm's length agency. They will set up the governance model, and we'll make sure that whatever is invested in it is in Ontario's public interest.
Minister, to Colin's question, do you have to admit at some point that 1.5 million is not going to be feasible?
Oh, I'm not willing to do that. I mean, I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm not willing to bet that they're not going to win the World Series anytime soon, even though it ended last night. And no, you got to keep going. And, look, Statistics Canada reported that almost 500,000 people came to Ontario, or at least the net population grew. We've seen statistics already for the first 2 quarters. We're on track again. And we've seen CIBC put out a report that, no, the number's more like 750,000 in Ontario. I talked about my parents in the fall economic state, my mother who came here, people want to come to Canada. They want to come to Ontario. And, it's not about, are we going to build 1.4, 1.6, 1.5? What the issue is that municipally, federally, provincially, we've got to work together to try to do the best we can.
On the contingency fund, why not put that $2.5 billion towards some sort of tangible programs that are going to help people now instead of sort of stashing it away in a rainy day fund?
Well, we are helping people now and on a range of things right across the piece. I think that the contingency fund, which is about 2.5% of our total expenditures, that means that we know where 97.5% is going specifically, but we can't predict where every dollar is going to be spent in which ministry because things come up, events occur. But infrastructure is so critical, and we're talking about the infrastructure bank here, but at the core, we need more long-term care beds. We need more power generation. We need more transmission and storage. We need more health care. We need more of everything. Schools, because schools are, they are getting full. And as people come to this great country, they expect us to be able to have the opportunity for a roof over their heads, that they can take their kids to school, they can get to work. Oh, sorry, Cynthia. She.
Go ahead.
Okay, then
If the private sector is struggling so much to build more houses, I don't understand why the government is so against building homes more directly. Is there an actual reason why the government is so against that other than it's communism?
Your words, not mine.
No, your words.
No, I didn't. Okay.
The Premier said that in the House.
He said it in the House that it was communism.
Look,
is there more to that objection than rhetoric?
Yeah, no, look, my parents, I'll come back to that. So I followed, they came from Hungary and Slovakia, and I watched over, as I was growing up for 50 years, what socialism was doing there, where the government planned everything, the government built everything. And I think what we have, which is fantastic in North America and around the world, we have a system that works, but we have to sometimes nudge it along. So that's why, for example, the HST rebate is making the difference. On a $500,000 building, that's 40,000 of provincial sales tax, 25,000 of federal provincial sales tax. That's 65,000. That's a 13% opportunity, which may be the difference. So instead of us building everything and controlling everything, we're giving incentives and putting the conditions. I think that's a better way to go.
They're not anywhere close to the target that you need. Like, so is your fear of socialism is stopping the government from doing something that the NDP at least is arguing could actually make a difference in building more houses?
We've chosen a path. We've been very clear about that path, and we're going to stick to that path. Cynthia.
Nothing in there for the city of Toronto, and I know there are talks to sort of help them out of their financial bind. Would it be fair to read into that maybe the government's going to upload the DVP and Gardner to help them with their expenses?
It's too early to go to that level of detail. What I can say is that we had a good meeting with the mayor just a few days ago. We are working closely together to define the challenges that we have to work together, and I'm encouraged by that. My deputy minister is the co-chair of the working group, so I'm very much aware of and involved. One of the takeaways, though, is why are we in the circumstance we're in? It's because we have so much people coming to this great country and province, and we need to work together, not just municipally and provincially, but the federal government. So jointly, the Premier and the Mayor called on the federal government to join us at the working table. Let's have these shared challenges that we can fix together. And I know if I learned anything in COVID, when we work together, boy, we can do amazing things.
So you probably know I'm going to ask you this because I ask you this every economic statement and budget. What about people with ODSP, on ODSP? Many people are suffering with the rise of inflation, the cost of groceries, but I can't imagine many are suffering more than those on ODSP who are below the poverty line, and most of them cannot work. So why isn't there something once and for all to actually help them survive at a decent rate and where they're not starving?
No, I always appreciate you asking that, and I think it's very, very important. I think we have to recognize that there's always more to do, but let's look at what we have done, and it's benefiting many on Ontario disability. We increased the rate by 5%, which took an effect one time last November. And no, let me finish if I can. 5% last November. And then, of course, we were the first government in history to index the benefits to inflation, and that was adjusted in July of this year. So almost 12% in less than 12 months. You mentioned not everyone can work, but those who can or would like to work, we increased the earning exemption from $200 to $1,000, and without any impact on their benefits, and they could put more money in their pockets. I've heard from many people on disability that was something they've wanted for a long time. There's always more to do, but we've taken action.
Minister, there was no booze news in the fall economic statement. Wondering if you could update us on the status of your negotiations for renegotiating the beer master framework agreement and moving wider locations for alcohol sales. You were doing some consultations but I understand those are under a non-disclosure agreement. What's the update?
No, thanks. That's usually Jeff Gray's question. So stepping in for Mike. Yeah, booze news, and maybe that's where we'll all go after this. It's a fair question. Obviously we've been working very hard. It's a complex system that we've set up over 97 years. I think it was 1927 or thereabouts when the LCBO came into existence. And so it's important. It's a commitment that we've made, and so we're continuing to have very serious discussions with the key players. And when we have news on the booze, we'll be sure to tell you.
Is anything off the table, like privatizing the LCBO? Is that off the table, or?
Well, I'm not going to speculate one way or the other. Let me just tell you that we're very focused on it. It's a priority. We have many priorities in government, and that continues to be a priority.
Your line of corner stores, it's going to happen.
Can I ask a quick one about the CPP meeting tomorrow?
Last question,
The CPP. Do you think Alberta's serious about this, and are they just testing the waters? And is Ontario bringing any of their own calculations to this pension meeting tomorrow about what you think the province is entitled to?
I would say we're certainly asking the federal government to show their analysis, and of course I want to hear from all the provinces. It's not just Ontario. We obviously we take this very seriously. We're concerned about Ontario workers. We're concerned not just for Ontarians but across the country that you continue to have a pension that you never should have to worry about. We've had great success. Canada Pension Plan's been very successful. So we want to hear from other provinces. We want to hear from the federal government in terms of some of their analysis. And I think it's always better when you're at a table talking about shared challenges. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.